Specialist with the Division of Community Assistance within the Office of Community Services. I'm excited to welcome you all to our third webinar for the Federal Fiscal Year 2023 CSBG State Plan. Today we'll be delving into sections 6 through 9. Before we get started, I would like to go over some housekeeping items. First, everyone has been muted on entry. We ask that everyone remains on mute throughout the webinar. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please enter those using the Q&A function. We will have time to address those questions at the end of the webinar, and this Q&A is what the presenters will be monitoring. This webinar is being recorded. The recording, along with a copy of the slides, will be posted to the OCS CSBG webinars page. As of right now, the slides for the first of 5 in the series have been posted online. I would also like to take a moment to introduce who in the Division of Community Assistance you will be hearing from today. First, we will hear opening remarks from CSBG Senior Policy Advisor Josetta Alexander, followed by material presented on the CSBG State Plan by Jamia Furbush, Norris Phillip, and myself. More specifically, today's webinar will begin with important reminders, followed by an overview of sections 6 through 9 of the Federal Fiscal Year 2023 CSBG State Plan. Throughout the presentation, you will hear information on revisions to the plan, as well as best practices and important reminders. We will end by providing you with contact information, an opportunity to ask questions, and important announcements from the federal office. Now let's please welcome Josetta Alexander.
Thank you, Jessica, and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for part 3 of our FY23 CSBG State Plan webinar series. The State Plan serves as an application for CSBG funding and provides a roadmap detailing how each state will administer CSBG funds in support of continued progression towards meeting the 3 national program goals, which are to reduce poverty, empower low-income families and individuals to become self-sufficient, and revitalize low-income communities. The CSBG State Plan has been revised to include additional clarity and conciseness to the plan. Today, as Jessica mentioned, we will focus on sections 6 through 9 of the State Plan. This webinar applies to all states, whether you have a 1-year plan or a 2-year plan. I would also like to take this time to remind the network about the CSBG Training and Technical Needs Assessment Survey. The survey is out now for your participation. The survey results will inform OCS's training and technical assistance learning agenda and will help determine how CSBG training and technical assistance funding is utilized. We encourage multiple staff at agencies to respond to the survey, especially if you have different TNTA needs. This will allow OCS to gather diverse and complete responses about your most pressing TNTA needs. The survey is open now and again will close on Friday, July 8th. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Jamia and Jessica to walk you through sections 6 through 9 of the CSBG State Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Josetta. Before we discuss sections 6 through 9, I would like to touch base on a few important reminders. All federal fiscal year 2023 CSBG state plans are due by Thursday, September 1st, 2022, and should cover the federal fiscal year, which is October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. As a reminder, the CSBG State Plan is a critical document for both state and federal oversight of the block grant. It is strongly recommended that states, territories, and tribes review their state plan annually to ensure their program is being administered in accordance with the changing times. Ultimately, this framework will enable the CSBG network across local, state, and federal levels to continuously improve their programs and generate breakthrough outcomes for families, individuals, and communities. We anticipate the CSBG State Plan being available on Grant Solutions by the end of this month. The following state grant recipients are required to submit a new CSBG state plan for federal fiscal year 2023. For those submitting a 1-year plan or the first year of a 2-year plan, You will need to complete and submit an entire new plan as well as the SF 424M. If you are submitting a 2-year plan, please provide information for both years that are covered by the CSBG State Plan. The following grant recipients are required to submit an SF 424M and OLDC via grantsolutions.gov. For those who are submitting for the second year of a 2-year plan, you will need to submit an SF 424M separately. You will also have the option to update or revise your plan. OCS suggests only doing so for major revisions. Major revisions include, but are not limited to, making a change to the state's plan for usage of funds, making significant proposed changes to the state CSBG policies or procedures, and/or revising the state's organizational standards, policies, procedures, and/or assessment. I will now turn it over to Jessica to start the review of sections 6 through 9 of the CSBG State Plan.
Thanks, Jamia. Let's start with the review of Section 6, Organizational Standards for Eligible Entities. The purpose of this section is to describe the state procedures related to organizational standards. This includes the grant recipient's choice of standards, the state level implementation process, the assessment procedures, including corrective action procedures, and any special circumstances in or exceptions to that process. Of note, the CSBG Act gives states both the authority and responsibility for effective oversight of eligible entities that receive CSBG funds. Section 678B of the CSBG requires state lead agencies to establish performance goals, administrative standards, financial management requirements, and other requirements that ensure appropriate level of accountability and quality among the state's eligible entities. To meet these responsibilities, states must establish and communicate clear and comprehensive standards and hold eligible entities accountable. This section clarifies an essential process for this requirement and for the administration of the grant. The organizational standards are a component of the accountability system for CSBG and part of an enhanced system for performance management across the CSBG network. The standards ensure CSBG eligible entities have the organizational capacity to deliver services to low-income individuals and communities. By completing this section, states can adjust as needed and communicate their standards and how they will utilize them to their network and the federal government. OCS can use this information to determine if standards are meeting requirements under the CSBG Act and identify if state grant recipients may benefit from TNTA. Further, this section becomes even more important as we have seen the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the organizational capacity of our eligible entities. And this may present the opportunity to evaluate if these standards can be modified or adjusted to navigate similar issues in the future. As a reminder, IM 138 is a helpful reference for better understanding why this section exists, what the organizational standards are, and where to find promising practices and other tools. With regards to revisions made to Section 6, there is a larger character limit for item 6.1c, alternative organizational standards, to be used to describe changes since the last plan submission. There is also an option for a narrative in 6.3 to describe any other ways the state will assess eligible entities against organizational standards. Lastly, OCS clarified in 6.4 eligible entity exemptions that the grant recipient will only need to respond to question 6.4a if responded yes to 6.4. The remaining changes are decreased character limits for narratives that do not result in significant changes to the plan. I wanted to speak momentarily about performance target. When determining the performance target for an eligible entity, it is essential that the state review IM 138 for guidance and that they revisit the previous performance in reaching the target. The state should collaborate with eligible entities and state associations to ensure all circumstances are considered while setting a realistic and impactful target. The voices from the field will help identify any considerable circumstances, such as the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the organizational capacity of eligible entities, and areas for TNTA that will be needed to achieve the new target.
The purpose of Section 7, State Use of Funds, is to collect information on the method or formula for allocating and distributing funds across three areas: the 90% of funds allocated to eligible entities, the administrative funds, and the remainder of discretionary funds. A reminder that the statutory requirements under Section 675C of the CSBG Act require that not less than 19% of the funds made available to a state is distributed to eligible entities. The Act also states that no state may spend more than the greater of $55,000 or 5% of the grant for administrative expenses, including monitoring activities. The state can use the remainder of the allotment for discretionary activities. This section is very important for the planning of the administration of CSBG. It requires the state to identify how they will distribute money and if and how much money they will retain for admin and discretionary spending. It also requires, again, that your eligible entity list is up to date and reflective of the entities listed in this section. With regards to revisions for Section 7, Item 7.1 now includes the option for a brief narrative if other was selected as the method or formula for allocating funds. The next and most significant revision is that we have added Item 7.3a, distribution method, which my colleague Norris Phillip will discuss on the next slide. Lastly, for Item 7.5, the title has changed to Distribution of Funds Performance Management Adjustment for clarity. The remaining revisions consist of minor changes to character limits, which do not result in significant changes to the plan. I would now like to invite my colleague Norris to discuss Item 7.3a.
Thank you, Jamia. In total, Section 7 refers to the specific steps the state takes for distributing funds to eligible entities. We added a question on distribution methods so that OCS can better define and understand what distribution methods are being used across the CSBG network. OCS has come to define the following: reimbursements, payments made to entity after expenses incurred; advance, payments made to entity prior to expenses on a regular basis; hybrid, either a one-time advance or advances that are are recovered by the state over time; or other, defining other default or standard practices within the state. As we have seen with CARES funding monitoring, state grant recipients use a variety of methods for distribution of funds. By selecting a method or using the narrative to describe how funds are distributed, the state and federal partners can better identify, understand, and communicate around any discrepancies in funding reported through our payment management system.
Thank you, Norris. The remaining revisions to Section 7 are minor and primarily consist of changes to character limits. Item 7.9 now allows for a brief description for 7.9D through 7.9H, detailing the use of remainder and discretionary funds. Additionally, the title for item 7.11 was changed to Use of Remainder Discretionary Funds, Performance Management Adjustment for clarity. I would like to touch base on some common errors seen in item 7.9, Use of Remainder Discretionary Funds. For this section, no should only be selected if the percentages provided under 7.2 and 7.6 equal 100%. If they do not, then the state will need to complete item 7.9. Lastly, if a funded activity fits under more than one category in the table, allocate the funds among the categories. For example, if the state contracts funds to the State Community Action Association to provide TNTA to eligible entities and to create a statewide data system, the funds for that contract should be allocated appropriately between items 7.9A and 7.9C.
Purpose of Section 8 is to describe the state's plan for delivering CSBG-funded training and technical assistance to eligible entities. This includes the TNTA schedule for Year 1 and Year 2 if applicable, the planned budget for TNTA, the technical assistance plans or TAPs, and the performance management adjustments. This section should reflect the needs of the eligible entities in successfully and efficiently administering the CSBG. States should utilize information from sources such as annual reports, direct feedback from eligible entities and the state associations, and observe challenges when determining what this TNTA plan will encompass. Providing a thorough outline of the state TNTA plan will also allow OCS to see where need is greatest and help us tailor the provision of TNTA from the federal office as well. There were several important revisions made to Section 8 for the fiscal year 2023 CSBG State Plan. First, based on feedback from the CSBG state lead agencies, OCS revised Item 8.1, Training and Technical Assistance Plan, to include all TNTA funded through admin or remainder discretionary funds, and all TNTA administered by the state and/or through partnerships. Next, after reviewing the CSBG Act and the definition of quality improvement plans, or QIPs, OCS removed QIPs from Item 8.2, now titled Organizational Standards Technical Assistance. Per the CSBG Act, QIPs are intended as the final step before potential de-designation. Non-compliance with the CSBG organizational standards cannot be the sole reason for de-designation. Therefore, OCS removed the mention of QIPs from the question, leaving technical assistance plans in place. Further, there has been added a checkbox to Item 8.3 to identify if all TNTA is conducted by the state, and a minor title change to Item 8.4 to CSBG-funded TNTA performance management adjustments for clarity. OCS wants to emphasize that this section is essential for the state to ensure that TNTA addresses the greatest needs of their network and that there is time for preparation of high-quality TNTA. It is important that this section intentionally and purposefully include voices from the field. Section 8 is also important to the federal office. As noted, OCS is engaged in a realignment of our TNTA to the CSBG network, with the goal of providing support for areas of greatest need. Section 8 of the CSBG State Plan provides insight into what the states are prioritizing themselves for TNTA and what the federal office should consider as well. This section also includes TAPs, which can help us identify a pattern of concerns across CAAs. We really appreciate the time that is taken in this section, as it also helps us support you.
The purpose of Section 9 is to detail the state-level linkages and coordination that the state intends to create or maintain to ensure increased access to CSBG services for low-income individuals, families, and communities. OCS wants to know, how does the CSBG network work and partner with communities and other anti-poverty programs to provide the best opportunities possible? How does the state office meaningfully collaborate with their own government, their local network of CAAs, and members and organizations across the community to ensure high quality, innovative, and locally driven services are available to individuals and families living in poverty? These collaborations are not always through a contract for services or involve an MOU. We want to see any actively pursued linkages and collaborative efforts meant to improve services. For revisions to Section 9, the first item, 9.1, was changed to Head Start State Collaboration Offices. For item 9.2, state linkages and coordination at the local level, and item 9.3, state assurance of eligible entity linkages and coordination. OCS clarified their interpretation of what linkages and coordination are, which we will talk more about on the next slide. The remaining revisions to Section 9 were minor and primarily consisted of changes to character limits. In items 9.2 and 9.3, OCS clarified that state linkages and coordination at the local level should include how the state is encouraging partnerships and collaboration with public and private sector organizations to assure effectiveness and to provide the best opportunities to the individuals, families, and communities that CSBG serves. The linkages and coordination efforts of the state and eligible entities should be intentional, based on the needs of the local community, and include the active participation of the state lead agency or the eligible entity in planning and implementation. Some examples of how the federal government engages in linkages and coordination are things like our collaboration with the Department of Labor and the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. To ensure CSBG is brought to the table for workforce innovations, our combined outreach and collaboration with the Office of Head Start to ensure high-quality child development and education services and work opportunities are available to families, and working with the Office of Family Assistance to pilot new programs that strengthen the safety net for clients served. These efforts often do not include a contract, but they make a difference in the services and opportunities available to the network. While these are across the federal network, the same opportunities for similar types of coordination are available at the state level. As mentioned on the previous slide, one example of state-level coordination in linkages is through WIOA. It is important to note that OCS has seen a common error with regards to item 9.1, WIOA, employment and training activities. States may check that they are part of a WIOA combined state plan as a partner program when technically they may not be. WIOA can be a bit confusing in the language describing how CSBG is involved, so we wanted to take a moment to clarify. CSBG can participate with WIOA in two ways: as a required partner for the American Job Centers, AJCs, and or as a partner program in a combined state plan. To answer the question in item 9.1, you should only select yes if you are a partner program in the WIOA combined state plan, which means you have assisted in completing the designated section for CSBG in the WIOA combined state plan. If you are not a partner in the WIOA combined state plan, but you are present and or have an MOU with an AJC, select no and complete the narrative for 9.4B. If you are not a partner program in the WIOA combined state plan, but provide workforce employment and training activities outside of AJCs, select no and complete the narrative for 9.4B. There are only a few states who should be answering yes, and if you are unsure, please ask your assigned program specialist.
The remainder of Section 9, most revisions were minor adjustments in character limit, meaning no significant change. For item 9.9, note that you will no longer be able to utilize the add a row function for the communications plan table. And for item 9.11, the title has changed to Communication Plan Performance Management Adjustment for clarity. I would like to take a moment to discuss items 9.9 and 9.10 briefly. Item 9.9 provides the opportunity for the state to describe how they will communicate with their local CSBG network regarding the main requirements and subjects under CSBG. Under 9.10, item 9.10 provides the opportunity for the state to lay out a plan for providing feedback on state accountability measures to the state CSBG network and for obtaining information on areas where TNTA support is needed. Both sections are key for providing support and guidance to your local CSBG network and to ensure there is a clear and consistent stream of information from the state office to the field and vice versa. It also assists the federal office in sharing information as it includes how the state will share feedback and information from OCS to the local network. Completing the section presents an opportunity to engage in an evaluation of your communications plans with your network, learning from any issues confronted while trying to communicate during the pandemic, and receiving feedback on what does and does not work.
That concludes our review of sections 6 through 9. Please reach out to the DCA office for any program assistance and/or technical OLDC assistance and the completion of your fiscal year 2023 CSBG State Plan. We have listed contact information on the slide, and you can also find contact information on the CSBG webpage. If emailing for assistance, please remember to always CC CSBG States at acf.hhs.gov. I will now ask Norris, Monique, and Josetta to join us in answering any questions.
Hey, Jamia, we do have one question for WIOA. What if your state has a unified state plan?
I can answer that one. So for a unified state plan, you're going to want to answer no, but still complete 9.4A. We respond yes, just if you're included in the combined state plan, as the questions align between the combined state plan and our state plan. So for Karen, you would select no, but still enter the same information that you've provided on your past plans. That looks like if there's no other questions, we can move on. Yep, it's just.
Yep, we'll move on, but if you think of other questions as we're talking through the last few announcements, please feel free to add them and we'll circle back.
Well, thank you everyone myself for answering the question. So now I'm going to move forward to the announcements. There will be 2 more webinars in this federal fiscal year 2023 CSBG State Plan webinar series. Please note that the date for the July 6th webinar has changed to July 7th. During the presentation on July 7th, we will be focusing on completing sections 10 through 13. The final webinar will be on July 13th, starting at 3:30 p.m., so a different time than the other ones, during which we will provide an OLDC refresher, review some demonstrations, and provide also a refresher of the previous webinars. I am excited to also announce that Grant Solutions is now open, so everyone will be able to access that. And then if you have not yet, please follow OCS on Twitter at OCS_ACF.gov. OCS has also started using a new electronic mailing service that will allow communication of information in a timely manner and help collect analytics that will inform outreach efforts in the future. As OCS transitions to this service, please continue to check your junk and spam folder for future communications. If a communication goes to your junk or spam mail, please mark this under safe to avoid this happening in the future. You can also contact Monique and Nikki Frazier if you have any questions. I will now turn it over to Monique to share 2 more important announcements.
Thank you, Jessica. Please bring your attention to a few important communications that we have or will be releasing to ensure it has reached you. While we really try to space out our communications, this month has been full of announcements, or I should say specifically the past 2 weeks. And we thought it was important to keep the network informed. As Jessica mentioned, if you do not see a CSBG communication within your inbox, please check your junk or spam mail. I do see that we're still preparing that CSBG state plan preparation, but again, as Jessica mentioned, OLDC is now open. It does have the new template. The template is available in previous DCL, specifically CSBG DCL 2021-19. So it is available, but we also want to release a DCL that more specifically talked about the things that we talked about in these past 2 webinars, as well as the webinar for next week. So that will be released, as well as our action transmittal for the state plan application. And I just want to remind everyone again of our special event. We are so excited that we will have this opportunity to have a meet and greet with Assistant Secretary January Contreras on July 6th at 2:00 p.m. as she prepares to mark her first 100 days with ACF. You should have already received a communication last week on June 22nd, 22, with the links shared in this presentation. We have also added the links to the chat, so please be sure to pre-register for this event. CSBG states, territories, tribes, and tribal organizations, state associations, and the national TNTA partners are invited. This is the first meet and greet with OCS, and we hope to have additional events with Assistant Secretary Contreras in the future. However, she has met with OCS programs before, including introducing the LIHEAP dashboard. If you have not already submitted a question in advance, please do so today. Today is the last day we're accepting pre-questions. This is going to help us ensure that we're able to answer all questions during this event. It is the 3rd link that Jessica just added to the chat. And again, if you have not already registered, please do so at your earliest convenience. And I will pass it back to Josetta.
Hi. Thank you to my OCS colleagues, and thank you to everyone for joining today's call. As a reminder, the CSBG Training and Technical Assistance Needs Survey is open now and will close on Friday, July 8th. The survey results will inform OCS's training and technical assistance learning agenda and will also help determine how CSBG training and technical assistance funds are utilized. We appreciate your participation. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our new Program Branch Chief, Verna Best. I'm sure many of you know Ms. Best. Her commitment to the CSBG network spans more than a decade at the community, state, and national levels. Prior to federal service, Ms. Best worked as a program manager for the Wake County Human Services Social and Economic Vitality Initiative in Raleigh, North Carolina. And she worked for 11 years as a CSBG manager and a CSBG self-sufficient program administrator at Wayne Action Group for Economic Solvency, which is a community action agency. Ms. Best has also served in several roles on the National Association of State Community Services Programs, or NASCAS board, including vice president, treasurer, and CSBG program chair. She also served on a National Community Action Partnership, CSBG working group to support the development of the organizational standards. Ms. Best is also certified as a National Peer-to-Peer Results-Oriented Management and Accountability, or ROMA trainer. As a result of her commitment to the CSBG network, Ms. Best was awarded the Marjorie J. Witherspoon Award by the NASCAS board in March of 2017, recognizing her outstanding service to her peers in NASCAS. Welcome to the team. Welcome to OCS, Verna. Thank you very much, everyone, and we look forward to seeing you at our next webinar on Thursday, July 7th. I know one of our slides said July 6th, but the correct date is Thursday, July 7th from 3 to 4 p.m. Eastern. Have a great evening, everyone.
We did get a few more questions.
Okay.
So I want to quickly answer those. If there's a new person in your state who needs to be added to OLDC, please contact Nikki Frazier and Jacinta Matunga. I will go back to that slide so that you can see their information on the screen. The new template is available in Word. We will be releasing that with the action transmittal, which we hope to release by the end of this week. It's just going through clearance right now. And then if you are in the middle of your 2-year plan, please feel free to go ahead and submit your SF424M at your earliest convenience. There is no reason to wait for that. So if you can do it now, feel free to do so. And the slide decks from today's presentation will be available on the webinar OCS's webinar webpage by tomorrow. The recordings for the previous two webinars should also be available tomorrow. And I will ask my colleague Nikki Frazier to add the webinar link or Renika Carr to add the webinar page link to the chat as well, so you guys can have easy access to that. Jessica, Jamia, or Gisetta, did you guys want to do any more final words before we close out?
Thank you for joining.
And here, I do see a chat from Gavin. Gavin, yes, the IT team is working on updating that date for the July 7th invitation.
To be clear, sorry, Gisetta, it has already been updated. So if you've already pre-registered, your calendar will not automatically update. So you should just move it to July 7th, but you do not need to pre-register. I mean, pre-register.
Register again.
That's that.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic evening.
Thank you.